Now, in our democracies today, this separation of the economic from the political sphere, the moment it started happening, it gave rise to an inexorable, epic struggle between the two, with the economic sphere colonizing the political sphere, eating into its power. Have you wondered why politicians are not what they used to be? It's not because their DNA has degenerated. It is rather because one can be in government today and not in power, because power has migrated from the political to the economic sphere, which is separate. Indeed, I spoke about my quarrel with capitalism. If you think about it, it is a little bit like a population of predators that are so successful in decimating the prey that they must feed on that in the end they starve. Similarly, the economic sphere has been colonizing and cannibalizing the political sphere to such an extent that it is undermining itself, causing economic crisis. Corporate power is increasing, political goods are devaluing, inequality is rising, aggregate demand is falling, and CEOs of corporations are too scared to invest the cash of their corporations. So, the more capitalism succeeds in taking the demos out of democracy, the taller the twin peaks, the greater the waste of human resources and humanity's wealth. Clearly, if this is right, we must reunite the political and the economic sphere, and better do it with a demos being in control, like in ancient Athens, except without the slaves or the exclusion of women and migrants. Now, this is not an original idea. The Marxist left had that idea 100 years ago, and it didn't go very well, did it? The lesson that we learned from the Soviet debacle is that only by a miracle will the working poor be re-empowered, as they were in ancient Athens, without creating new forms of brutality and waste. But there is a solution. Eliminate the working poor. Capitalism is doing it by replacing low-wage workers with automata, androids, robots. The problem is that as long as the economic and the political spheres are separate, automation makes the twin peaks taller, the waste loftier, and the social conflicts deeper, including, soon, I believe, in places like China. So we need to reconfigure, we need to reunite the economic and the political spheres, but we better do it by democratizing the reunified sphere, lest we end up with a surveillance-mad hyper-autocracy that makes The Matrix, the movie, look like a documentary. So the question is not whether capitalism will survive the technological innovations it is spawning. The more interesting question is whether capitalism will be succeeded by something resembling a Matrix dystopia, or something much closer to a Star Trek-like society, where machines serve the humans, and the humans expend their energies exploring the universe and indulging in long debates about the meaning of life in some ancient Athenian-like high-tech agora. I think we can afford to be optimistic. But what would it take? What would it look like to have this Star Trek-like utopia instead of the Matrix-like dystopia? In practical terms, allow me to share just briefly a couple of examples. At the level of the enterprise, imagine a capital market where you earn capital as you work, and where your capital follows you from one job to another, from one company to another, and the company, whichever one you happen to work at that time, is solely owned by those who happen to work in it at that moment. Then all income stems from capital, from profits. And the very concept of wage labor becomes obsolete. No more separation between those who own but do not work in the company and those who work but do not own the company. No more a tug of war between capital and labor. No great gap between investment and saving. Indeed, no towering twin peaks. At the level of the global political economy, imagine for a moment that our national currencies have a free-floating exchange rate with a universal global digital currency, one that is issued by the International Monetary Fund, the G20, on behalf of all humanity. And imagine further that all international trade is denominated in this currency. Let's call it the cosmos, in units of cosmos. With every government agreeing to be paying into a common fund a sum of cosmos units proportional to the country's trade deficit, or indeed to a country's trade surplus. And imagine that that fund is utilized to invest in green technologies, especially in parts of the world where investment funding is scarce. This is not a new idea. It's what, effectively, John Maynard Keynes proposed in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. The problem is that back then, they didn't have the technology to implement it. Now we do, especially in the context of a reunified political, economic sphere. The world that I am describing to you is simultaneously libertarian in that it prioritizes empowered individuals, Marxist, since it will have confined to the dustbin of history the division between capital and labor, and Keynesian, global Keynesian. But above all else, it is a world in which we will be able to imagine an authentic democracy. Will such a world dawn? Or shall we descend into a matrix-like dystopia? The answer lies in a political choice that we shall be making collectively. It is our choice, and we better make it democratically. Thank you.